In our really busy lives, we're often looking for shortcuts,
Yeah.
right? Ways to boost focus or calm our minds, maybe even just get a better night's sleep. So what if I told you there's this simple auditory thing? Well, some people claim it can help you do just that, just by listening. Today, we're diving deep into binaural beats, our mission, to really unpack what they are, how they supposedly work, the claimed benefits, which sound pretty interesting how you might use them, and maybe most importantly, what the actual research says. We've gone through the sources you shared and pulled out the key bits to give you, hopefully, a really clear picture.
Yeah, it really is fascinating when you look at how our brains process sound. It seems simple, right? Just two tones. But it connects to some pretty complex brain states. It hints at these surprising ways we might be able to nudge our own minds.
Okay, sounds influencing our minds. Let's get right into it then. What exactly is a binaural beat? How does this auditory illusion thing work?
Right. So binaural beats are fundamentally an auditory illusion. Basically, it happens when you hear two pure tones,
Yeah.
okay? Each one has a slightly different frequency, and critically, one tone goes in one ear, the other tone in the other ear. You absolutely have to use headphones for this. Your brain doesn't just register the two separate sounds, it actually processes the difference between them,
Right.
and it perceives this third kind of phantom beat. Yeah, like the source gave a good example. Say you've got a 132 hertz tone in your left ear and maybe 121 hertz in your right ear. Your brain sort of computes that difference and perceives an 11 hertz beat. It's like your brain's creating this ghost sound.
Okay, that makes sense. An 11 hertz beat from 132 and 121.
Got it. And just to be super clear on the conditions you mentioned, the tones have to be under 1,000 hertz.
That's right.
And the difference between them can't be more than 30 hertz. And, worth saying again, headphones or earbuds. Absolutely essential.
Non-negotiable, yeah. Otherwise, you're just hearing two distinct sounds out loud.
Right. And, while this kind of principle maybe has roots in music, like tuning instruments way back when, it's the modern idea of using them for well-being that's really caught on.
Okay, so the brain creates this phantom sound. That's pretty cool in itself. But how does that auditory trick translate into actual mental benefits? That's the big question, I guess.
Well, this is where we get into the core idea, which is called brainwave entrainment. The theory, essentially, is that listening to these specific binaural beats can actually influence your brain's electrical activity. Your brainwaves are thought to synchronize or entrain with the frequency of that beat you're perceiving.
Entrain, like they follow along.
Kind of, yeah. They lock onto that rhythm. And different brainwave frequencies are quite strongly linked to different mental states.
Yeah.
So, for instance, you've got delta waves. They're really slow, like 1 to 4 hertz. Think deep sleep, serious relaxation, maybe even helping with healing or pain relief. Then, moving up a bit, you have theta waves. That's 4 to 8 hertz. They're associated more with REM sleep, less anxiety, relaxation, but also those meditative or creative states. Memory formation, too.
Okay. Delta for deep sleep. Theta for REM and creativity.
Exactly. Then there's alpha, 8 to 13 hertz. That's often linked to just general relaxation, positive thinking, less anxiety again, and maybe being more receptive to learning. Then beta, 14 to 30 hertz. That's your focus state, concentration, alertness, problem solving, memory, sort of active thinking. And finally, gamma, that's 30 hertz and up. High-level thinking, memory recall, peak awareness. Actually, one source mentioned a 2020 study specifically looking at 40 hertz for enhancing training and learning.
Wow, okay. So it's a whole spectrum of brain states mapped to these frequencies. So the idea is, if I want to relax, I pick a beat in the alpha range, say 10 hertz, and my brain waves might sync up to that 10 hertz frequency.
That's the core theory, yes. You're essentially trying to guide your brain towards a desired state using sound as the guide.
It sounds a bit like a shortcut, maybe.
That's often how it's presented, yeah. A potentially faster way to get into those mental states that practices like, say, meditation aim for. Which, meditation has proven benefits, but lots of people find it, well, hard to stick with.
Absolutely. I know I do sometimes.
So the claimed benefits are pretty broad because of this link to brainwaves. Things like reduced anxiety and stress, that's often linked to theta and alpha, increased focus and concentration, beta and gamma, just general lower stress, more relaxation. Some claim it fosters positive moods, promotes creativity, even helps manage pain. And a big one is improved sleep, often using those delta and beta frequencies, plus helping people get into deeper meditative states, maybe quicker than they normally would.
That's quite a list. Reduce stress, better focus, improve sleep, creativity.
Yeah.
It covers a lot of ground.
Yeah.
It makes sense why people would be interested, especially comparing it to meditation. Meditation works. We know that less stress maybe even slows brain aging, boosts mental health, attention span. But like you said, it takes practice, consistent practice. So yeah, a technological assist like binaural beats sounds appealing.
Okay, so if someone listening is curious now and thinking, all right, I want to give this a try, what do they actually need? How do you do it?
It's actually really straightforward.
Yeah.
All you really need is the binaural beat audio itself and a pair of headphones or earbuds. That's it.
Simple enough. Where do you find the audio?
Oh, it's everywhere now. YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music. Lots of streaming services have tracks. There are also dedicated apps you can download or just audio files you can buy or find. Just, make sure they're actually binaural beats and meet those technical points we talked about. Tones under 1,000 hertz, difference less than 30 hertz.
Right. And headphones are key. Can't stress that enough. Cannot stress that enough. And then ideally you'd find a quiet place, comfortable, free from distractions. Give your brain a chance to tune in.
Makes sense. Minimize other inputs.
Yeah. Then it's about choosing the right frequency for what you want. If you're aiming for deep sleep, you'd search for delta wave binaural beats. If it's concentration, look for beta.
Okay. And how long should you listen? Is it like 5 minutes and you're focused?
Probably not 5 minutes. The suggestion is often at least 30 minutes a day to give your brain a chance to potentially entrain. But you can definitely experiment. Some people listen for longer, maybe an hour or even more, especially if they're dealing with high anxiety or stress. Listening with your eyes closed can help some people too, just reduces visual distraction.
Okay, 30 minutes, minimum, quiet space, headphones, right frequency. Sounds doable. But here comes the critical part. This all sounds very promising, maybe even easy. What does the science actually say? Is there solid evidence backing these claims? Or is it mostly, people saying it works for them?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? The research picture is, well, it's mixed, but interesting. Many studies are small, but some do show positive effects, particularly for anxiety, mood, and maybe performance. For example, there was a controlled study back in 2005. They looked at about 100 people who were about to have surgery. Pretty stressful situation. The group that listened to binaural beat audio had their pre-op anxiety cut roughly in half compared to the control groups. That's pretty significant.
Wow, cut in half, okay.
Yeah. Then there was a 2007 study, though it was uncontrolled. 8 adults listened to delta wave beats for 60 days straight. They reported significant drops in anxiety and better quality of life. Now, you have to take that with a grain of salt. Small group, uncontrolled, self-reported. Needs bigger studies, obviously.
Sure, but still interesting.
Right. And a larger trial in 2011, randomized controlled, this time with nearly 300 ER patients. They also found significant decreases in anxiety levels when patients listened to audio that had binaural beats embedded in it. More recently, a 2019 study even suggested that maybe combining binaural beats with ASMR could be more effective than using either one by itself.
ASMR, okay. Another auditory phenomenon. Interesting concept.
Exactly. But while we have these promising results, connecting it to the bigger picture, well, it brings up questions about consistency. It's not always clear-cut. For instance, a big review in 2015 looked at a bunch of studies and basically said, look, a lot of this research is limited, sometimes contradictory, and they even found some evidence that the positive effects might diminish over time. So they concluded more research is definitely needed, especially comparing them directly to, say, monaural beats, which is a different kind of auditory beat.
Ah, okay, so diminishing returns maybe.
Potentially. And even more recently, one study hinted that using binaural beats, particularly just listening at home without guidance, could potentially worsen performance on complex learning tasks.
Worsen? How?
Well, the idea was maybe people were choosing the wrong frequencies or just listening for too long, maybe creating cognitive fatigue instead of focus. So it's not necessarily a guaranteed benefit in all situations.
Right, so it's definitely not a silver bullet. The research shows some promise, especially for anxiety, but it's not conclusive across the board. Effectiveness seems to vary a lot, and more solid research would be helpful.
That sums it up pretty well. It's a developing field.
Okay, what about safety then? We're talking about influencing brainwaves. Are there any risks involved?
Generally speaking, just listening to the beats themselves is considered safe. There aren't really any known side effects from the beats.
Okay, that's good to hear.
But, and this is but the volume is critical. You absolutely have to keep it at a safe level. Our sources remind us prolonged exposure to sounds at or above 85 decibels, that's like heady city traffic, can cause permanent hearing damage over time. And importantly, cranking up the volume doesn't make the binaural beat effect any stronger. So there's zero benefit to listening too loudly, only risk.
Right. Protect your hearing. Makes total sense. Louder isn't better here.
Exactly. And there's one specific health consideration mentioned. For people with epilepsy or seizure disorders, this kind of technology could potentially pose a problem. So if that applies to you, definitely talk to your doctor before even thinking about trying a binaural beats.
Okay, that's a really important warning for that specific group. Consult the doctor. And I guess stepping back, it underlines that we still need more research on long-term effects generally. And of course, this isn't a replacement for proper medical treatment if you have significant anxiety, depression, sleep disorders, or other health issues. It's a tool, maybe, but not a cure.
Absolutely. It should be seen as a potential supplement, perhaps not a primary treatment. So to wrap up, I'd say binaural beats seem like a potentially useful tool. They're non-invasive, pretty accessible for most people, and might help with things like relaxation, maybe focus. And there is some human study evidence, particularly around anxiety, that backs up some of the claims.
Yeah, I think the takeaway is they're interesting, potentially helpful for some people for things like relaxation or maybe getting into a meditative state, but definitely not a guaranteed fix for anything. They won't work for everyone. The science is still evolving, and you need to be smart about using them. Safe volume. Talk to a doctor if you have epilepsy. They offer this kind of a auditory escape, maybe, for anyone interested in exploring ways to tweak their mental state, relax, maybe sleep a bit better. So thinking about all this, what does it really mean for you, the listener? Knowing how your brain can perceive these unique sounds, these phantom beats, what possibilities does that open up just in your mind about influencing your own mental landscape simply through what you choose to listen to? Something to think about.